Hey guys, I'm Jessica and this is Yoga for Beginners, and today I'm going to give you 3 modifications for Chaturanga. I'm a beginner teacher and I teach people who have never done yoga before, people who've done a little bit of yoga, people who have health issues, physical limitations, and they may at one point go to take a yoga class and see people doing this pose, this movement called Chaturanga, and be totally discouraged, totally frustrated, and maybe even worse, hurt themselves. So this is something that I take a lot of time with when I'm doing my beginner classes, and I make sure that I show everybody modifications so that you can keep your shoulders and your back and your hips safe, and also your wrists, well, basically everything. You want to keep everything safe when you're doing this pose. If this pose is done incorrectly, which it typically is, it will over time start to deteriorate the rotator cuff in your shoulders. It can also cause some spinal injuries, and we really want to avoid that. A lot of yoga teachers, although being great yoga teachers, do not focus on alignment and safety. So that's something that I focus on, and I really want to teach you guys how to do this properly. So let's get started. All right, we're going to start with modification number 1. This is for the beginner. This is for the basic, never done Chaturanga before, even have a hard time in downward facing dog. So we're going to get to downward facing dog first, and we start here. So the first option is going to be just to come forward into plank and drop right down onto your knees into a tabletop position. From here, you're going to arch the back, looking up, and then come back to a flat spine, tuck the toes under, and come back up into downward facing dog. Okay, so that's modification number 1. Modification number 2, we're going to come into it from downward facing dog. You're going to come forward into a plank and drop to your knees. So notice how I didn't drop to my knees here. This is tabletop. So maybe look in a mirror when you're doing this to see if you're doing it correctly, because it's easy to go, from the plank to here. It's a lot easier. You want to go from a regular plank to a modified plank by dropping your knees down right below where they would be if your knees were off the ground. You don't want to come forward with your feet. That's going to draw your knees forward. So drop to the knees. You're one straight line from your head all the way down to your knees. Now again, take a look in a mirror and make sure that you're doing it correctly. What you want to avoid doing here is dropping your chest down, dropping your belly down. That's going to create a lot of instability. So I want you to think of the Incredible Hulk. What does the Incredible Hulk do? He goes like this, right? Okay, so I want you to go, that's gonna tuck your tailbone under, squeezing your core, and press your shoulders up away from the floor. You're gonna look down at the floor. If you look forward, this is gonna give you the tendency to arch your back here, which you don't wanna do. So look down at the floor, press the floor away, pull the belly in, tuck the tailbone, bend the elbows halfway, and then point the toes, draw the chest forward, shoulders back and down, away from your ears. Tuck the toes under, start to lift back up into your downward facing dog. Okay, that was option number 2. A little bit more difficult, still very challenging, but not as challenging as option number 3. If you're a bodybuilder, if you're a plank expert, this may be a breeze for you. Otherwise, it's probably not going to be. I've been practicing yoga for over 20 years, and this still is something that I have a hard time doing over and over and over again in class. Please, please, please be careful when you're doing this, because if you do it incorrectly, then it's going to start to tear at your shoulders. Like I said, you really, really want to be careful with this pose. So let's get started. Coming from downward facing dog, you're going to inhale into a plank. So in your plank, you're really strong. You're tucking your tailbone, you're pressing your chest away from the floor, really engaging your abs. Squeeze your butt cheeks together, look down at the ground. Now, as you start to make this transition into Chaturanga, you're going to grip with your fingertips. You're going to come forward on your toes. See how my toes moved forward? Then you're going to bend the elbows halfway, point the toes and pull the chest forward, knees off the ground, hips off of the ground, thighs off of the ground. This is upward facing dog. Then tuck your toes and lift back into downward facing dog. Basically, it's a push-up with your elbows into your sides. Even doing one is a lot of work. So there are a lot of pitfalls when you're doing chaturanga. The first pitfall that you want to look for is when you're coming down from your plank to your chaturanga, you want to make sure that your shoulders don't go like this. So you can feel it. This is your shoulders being back, this is your shoulders being forward. So practice this a couple times and you'll be able to notice when you're in a plank, your shoulders are forward. When you come down into chaturanga, your shoulders are still slightly forward. They're not squeezing into your spine like this. So if you did a plank like this, all of that pressure is going right up into your shoulders. And you don't want to do that. You want to keep those shoulders safe. So really, guys, take a look at yourself in a mirror and make sure that you're doing the poses correctly. And if you aren't doing the pose correctly, if you're in option number 3 and it feels like you are compromising the integrity of the pose, then go back down to option number 2. If option number 2 is difficult, go back down to option number 1. You do not have to be a hero with this pose. In fact, your body will thank you if you are not. So let me know what you think. If you have any comments or questions, please post them in the comment section so I can help you out. I'm here to answer any questions you have. Happy planking and chaturanga-ing. Bye.